Today we go back to a strange year in music. It was equal parts wild and unpredictable. A true transitional year that was stuck between the past and the future, wasn't really sure of its identity. And where rock and pop and R&B collided in the most unforgettable way. Where one metal band had such an epic drum sound that an elder statesman of 60s rock was a surprise fan. Wait till you hear this story. Also a band that copped a Beatles record so blatantly that Paul McCartney joked he should be in line for royalties. Plus a teen sensation who released one of the darkest songs of the year and then disappeared forever. As well as a legendary rocker who sang a bunch of hilarious one-liners as a joke to get his famous producer to laugh. It worked, but the producer actually made him turn the running joke into a song, and it became one of the biggest rock hits ever. We count down the top 10 songs of an eclectic year in music. See if you can guess it before I announce it, coming up next. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember that strange taste of the stick of gum inside your trading cards back in the day, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia, whether it was Garbage Pail Kids or football or baseball cards. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the white button, click the bell so you always know when our stuff comes out. Also, go to professorofrock.com and sign up there. We got some great interviews there going up. Did I give you enough clues to guess the year? Did you guess it? The year of our countdown today. Today we're wading into the strange but irresistible year of 1989. It was the last year of the 80s, going into a new decade, and the year was as unsure of its identity as we were. I mean, it was a roller coaster ride, a cutting-edge new wave, and the last yelps of hair metal with a touch of new jack swing and classic rock. But even with its multiple personalities, the 10 songs I chose from 89 are as good as any year. You're going to see. Let's get into it. We kick off the countdown of the top 10 songs of 89 with a lone gold single in the U.S. for Motley Crue. At number 10, it's the Grab You by the Throat rock of Dr. Feelgood. Feelgood wasn't the average doc. You know, Nikki Sixx, the band's bassist and chief songwriter, had someone else in mind, and they didn't necessarily have a medical degree, just a steady supply of the substances that Nikki craved. He was a Los Angeles drug dealer, always ready to provide a fix, always lurking in the shadows of the city's underbelly. And in Nikki's world, that made him Dr. Feelgood. Nikki might have started with the title Dr. Feelgood, but as he dove into the lyrics, the song took on really a life of its own. What began as a simple name turned into something much bigger, a gritty, hard-hitting story woven into the words. In the end, though, Dr. Feelgood was all about drug dealers, because let's be honest, there's never just one. Motley Crue's fourth full-length album marked a turning point for the band, in more ways than one, though. After years of living in a haze of booze and hard drugs, this was the album that the band actually recorded, the first one that they recorded sober. Their manager, Doc McGee, had laid down the law. Clean up, or you're going to lose everything. The ultimatum came after a near-tragic wake-up call when bassist Nikki Sixx was clinically dead for several minutes following an overdose of heroin. Somehow he came back. When the band hit the studio, they did so with a clear head for the first time in their career. The other turning point on Dr. Feelgood was that they joined forces with Canadian super producer Bob Rock. He cranked up their sound to a whole new level, heavier, sharper, but still packed with their signature pop hooks. The result was Motley's first ever #1 album in America. And the power of the production, it was quite a feat. Bob Rock told me that even the father of Creedence Clearwater Revival, John Fogerty, was a fan. Listen to this story.
And the first thing out of John's mouth was, how'd you get the kick drum sound on Dr. Feelgood? This is John Fogerty, by the way. John Fogerty listened to Motley Crue. And I've come to know him a bit better. And he's a sonic guy like me.
Wow, yeah. That is so cool.
The single climbed to number 11 in New Zealand, number 7 on the mainstream rock chart in the US, and number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. Coming up next on the countdown of the top 10 songs on 1989, it's a track that changed everything. It begins and ends with famous quotes from real leaders, talking about Cult of Personality by Living Colour at number 9.
Look in my eyes.
Man, truly, this song was a game changer, and it shook the industry to its core a full 2 years before Nirvana.
The cult of personality.
Here's what singer Corey Glover and guitarist Vernon Reid told me about it.
When we were working on the music, and the music was so, entrancing in a way, even that the riff, part of that is, like we were also all kind of into fusion, you know what I mean? So it was like a cross between a kind of a Zeppelin pop, and it was it had a whole Mahavishnu trip to it.
For me, in my head, I heard John F. Kennedy's, we can go to the moon and other places. Nah, 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 nah. And ask not what your country can do for you.
Ask not what your country can do for you.
Doing Cult, knowing that it was the one song we all felt like this is the one. This is a crowd favorite. This is a favorite of ours. This is something. One of this from start to finish, it was a complete collaborative effort.
Cult of Personality by Living Colour made a strong impact on the charts. It went to number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and reached number 9 on the Billboard Album Rock Tracks chart. The song's success didn't stop there, though. It earned the band a Grammy for Best Hard Rock Performance at the 32nd Annual Grammy Awards.
Everybody here can easily understand.
Meanwhile, its electrifying music video took home 2 MTV Video Music Awards, Best Group Video and Best New Artist, cementing Living Colour's place in rock history. This song was a scorcher.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Coming in at number 8, it's a little bit of a surpriser here. This track might sound like light-hearted teenage fun based on its title, but don't be fooled. Beneath the surface, it's a deeply serious song about a friend struggling with cocaine addiction. At number 8, I've got Toy Soldiers by Markita. Very dark song here. Markita is Marta Marrero, born in a small town in California. She first gained recognition as an actress, starring as Gloria on Kids Incorporated from 84 to 86. You remember that from the Disney Channel? After a time on the show, she landed a recording deal with Columbia Records and released her self-titled debut album to critical acclaim, led by Toy Soldiers, which propelled her to pop stardom. Toy Soldiers is a song that allures you in, with its childlike vocals and innocent-sounding melody, only to reveal something haunting beneath the surface. It's really that contrast that makes it such a powerful song. For Markita, composing the tune, that was a leap into the unknown. Up until then, she'd only written light, carefree songs. But this time, it was different. She had something heavier on her heart, and she needed to express it. Markita admitted that she was hesitant, recalling the moment she reproached producer Michael J. She said, and I quote, "I'd only written 2 songs before, and they weren't like this, but I walked up to Michael and said, I want to write about real things, about drugs." It was the first time she'd found the courage to put something so raw and so personal into her music. And in so doing, she created a track that resonated with fans around the world. This is really a great track. Go back and listen to it again. I think you'll understand. Here's a couple of facts for you, though. One of the background singers on Toy Soldiers was Stacey Ferguson, who's also a cast member of Kids Incorporated with Markita. Of course, Stacey went on to be known as Fergie. He's the co-lead singer for Black Eyed Peas. Fortunately, there was a happy ending to the tale behind Toy Soldiers. Actually, the friend that Markita wrote about eventually beat the addiction and turned their life around. And though many people think Markita is a one-hit wonder, she actually had 4 pretty big hits over the course of a few years, including More Than You Know, Toy Soldiers, the remake of I Feel the Earth Move, and Love, Thy Will Be Done. That was a big one. Then she just vanished without a trace. Now, Toy Soldiers progressed to number 5 in the UK and Australia, number 4 in Canada, and number 1 in New Zealand, and for 2 weeks sat on top of the Billboard Hot 100 in 1989. Coming in at the number 7 spot on the top 10 songs of 1989, another huge hit from a former Eagle. In fact, this one made him the most successful solo Eagle. Talking about Don Henley's introspective classic, The End of the Innocence. And Don Henley co-wrote the song with Bruce Hornsby, one of my favorites. He played a major role in shaping the melody and the arrangement for the song. In addition to his role as a co-author of the track, Bruce delivered the sentimental piano sections on The End of the Innocence. Man, this one hits me in the heart every single time. That piano, truly. Don Henley described The End of the Innocence as a reflection on lost idealism and the shift from youthful naivete to a more cynical adult perspective. In interviews, he's noted that the song is both personal and political, capturing a sense of disillusionment, whether in relationships, society, or the broader political landscape of the late 1980s. I mean, this is such a poignant song. Don weaves a tale of loss in The End of the Innocence, not just personal, but national. His lyrics carry the weight of a fading romance, but beneath that, there's a deeper grief. Really a mourning for America that once felt simpler and more hopeful. As the song unfolds, it's clear that Don Henley, he's not just singing about a broken relationship, he's reflecting on the broader decline of American idealism. The tired old man that elected king, that's a pointed reference to our president of that moment. Henley felt we were a country drifting away from our former innocence. The political undertones, they're unmistakable on this. With every verse, he paints a picture of disillusionment, contrasting nostalgia with a reality that feels somehow colder, harsher, and far more complicated than it once did. It's like a sequel to Boys of Summer. Picture a quiet moment. Someone lying back, their hair cascading around them, lost in the warmth of a simpler time. The lyrics, just lay your head back on the ground and let your hair spill all around me. And that paints a scene of real tenderness. A fleeting glimpse of innocence and really intimacy. Let your hair fall all around. But then reality intrudes. Offer up your best defense, but this is the end. This is the end of the innocence. The mood shifts from there. What once felt effortless is now slipping away no matter how hard one tries to hold on to it. Your best defense. This is the end. There's a quiet resignation in those words, as if the weight of the experience is finally caught up, signaling the end of something really pure, something untouched by the harshness of this world. The flipped wording, it likely symbolized the steady decline of family farms across the U.S. Man, I remember my dad buying this tape and hearing it as he drove me to a friend's house. And hearing those lyrics, and my dad kind of explained his interpretation of them in a moment that will stay with me for the long haul. Especially the lyrics, somewhere back there in the dust, there's that same small town in each of us. Dust, that same small town in each of us. I need to remember this. Let me take a long last look before we say goodbye. It was the first time that I truly understood the saying, you can't go home again. I knew that in that moment with my dad, I could never truly go back, and life would somehow become more complex and fleeting from there. Last look before we say goodbye. And The End of the Innocence, that climbed to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, marking Don Henley's 5th top 10 hit as a solo artist. It also topped the album Rock Tracks chart, becoming his 4th number 1 on that countdown. In Canada, the song also reached number 3. That's a heavy song. Coming in number 6 on our countdown of the top 10 songs of 89, got the highest charting single for one Robert Smith. I've got Love Song by The Cure. Cure frontman Robert Smith wrote Love Song as a wedding gift for his fiancée Mary Poole, just before they tied the knot in 1988. Their love story began when they met in school at 14, and through the years, Mary remained his anchor. We just covered this in detail like a month ago, but Robert Smith has often credited Mary with saving his life, pulling him back from the edge of the cliff during his most self-destructive moments. Acutely aware that the relentless touring of a rock band could strain their relationship, Robert Smith actually wrote Love Song as a promise, a reassurance that no matter how far he traveled or how long he was away, his devotion to her would never waver. And he's still married to her. That's pretty incredible. However long I stay, whatever words I say, I will always love you. When The Cure released Disintegration, it was clear that they were diving into a darker, more psychedelic sound. The album felt like a haunting dream, one where reality twisted and emotions ran deep. This isn't even the best song on the album. It's the song that charted. I think Pictures of You would have been number one if it had been released or hit the top 40. Again, we only covered songs that hit the top 40 or peaked in the top 40 to make it a little bit easier. I mean, this is the most haunting record of 1989. The best record of 1989. Disintegration, you've got Lullaby, and I already said Pictures of You, The Same Deep Water as You, Plain Song. It just goes on and on. Love Song is probably the most uplifting song on this haunting album. And it just proved that, Robert Smith could write a hit if he wanted to. This song actually went all the way to number 2. It was held out of the number 1 position by Janet Jackson, Miss You Much. And there's another song that was held out of the number 1 by Miss You Much. We'll talk about that in a second. But it was their biggest hit, going to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. On a lighter note, moving along halfway through a countdown at number 5, I've got one of the catchiest songs, one of the most uplifting songs ever, Erasure with A Little Respect. Erasure, of course, a powerhouse duo of synth pioneer Vincent Clarke, and the soulful Andy Bell. Vince Clarke, a multi-talented musician who was in Depeche Mode and Yazoo. But Vince is also a gifted lyricist, crafting words that resonate with depth and meaning. I actually had a great discussion about A Little Respect with Vince and Andy. It was one of my favorite interviews. I was so pumped to do it. Here's what they told me.
The main thing was the melody, wasn't it, in the first place?
Yeah.
And it was written on guitar.
Yeah.
And we had that kind of rip-roaring guitar riff already, so it's very much drove the song, the guitar riff. And the lyrics were kind of quite, we didn't think about them too much. It was quite kind of cherry picking the lyrics, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the only thing I said to Andy, when Andy came up with the idea of using the word little respect, I said, well, you can't do that. Because there's R-E-S-P-C-T, there's all those other songs. I mean, we can't do the same thing. But I'm glad that we did.
A Little Respect was the biggest hit for Erasure. Single climbed to number 7 in Ireland, number 6 in Denmark, number 4 in the UK, and number 14 here on the Billboard Hot 100. Should have been a number 1 hit. It was a number 1 hit, though, on the dance tracks chart. They had many. Now it's time for a track that I can never listen to without getting just wrecked. And I'm sure a lot of you are the same. At number 4 in our countdown, I've got Mike and the Mechanics with The Living Years.
In the living years.
The Living Years was conceived during an incredibly emotional time for its writers, Mike Rutherford and Brian Alexander Robertson, B.A. Robertson. Brian penned the first verse just before his father passed away in 1986, while Mike Rutherford had also recently lost his father. That deep personal loss is interlaced in every note of this song. Paul Carrick's lead vocal is nothing short of breathtaking, one of his best performances. His warmth and passion elevate the song's emotional weight. It's one of the best vocals of the late 80s. Adding the choir, that brought an even greater depth, infusing the track with a stirring spirituality that few songs can match. I had the privilege of discussing the creation and development of The Living Years with Mr. Paul Carrick, one of my favorite vocalists. Shared some really cool insight about this song.
Probably the most profound experience of my life was losing my dad when I was a young kid. You know, I was only 11 when he passed from an accident, you know, at work. And so my experience doesn't relate to the experience they're talking about, because I wasn't distant from my dad. I had a wonderful experience of him. I only knew him for 11 years, but boy, he had a big effect on me. And I kind of saw it as a tribute. I thought, I don't know the specific of that kind of relationship, you know, with a father, but I know about loss. And up until that point, I'd never been able to sort of get that out. And I wasn't there that morning and all that, you know, when my father passed away and all that. I do feel it when I get to there. So again, lucky or honored or blessed or whatever to get to sing another great song like that.
B.A. Robertson not only co-wrote The Living Years, he also played the keyboards as the second single from the album of the same name, The Living Years, that soared to #1 in 7 countries, including Australia, Japan, Canada, and here on the Hot 100. On our journey of the top 10 songs on 1989, we bypass the jungle and we enter Paradise City with Guns N' Roses at #3 on our countdown. Yeah, in the early days, you know, before Guns N' Roses became rock legends, 5 young musicians, Axl Rose, Slash, Izzy Stradlin, Duff McKagan, and Steven Adler, they were holed up in a rehearsal space throwing around ideas and chasing a sound that felt like fire. One day as they jammed, Duff pulled out an old notebook filled with lyrics and the band started riffing. And the energy was electric in the room. Now, piece by piece, Paradise City began to take shape, marking the first time all 5 original members wrote a song together. It was raw, for sure. It was loud. And it was the beginning of something massive. According to Slash's biography, he started humming a melody and then Axl sang, "Take Me Down to the Paradise City." Slash chimed in with "Where the grass is green and the girls are pretty." And then Rose sang the first line again, and Slash shouted out "Where the girls are fat and they've got big," can't say it on here, but you know, it rhymes with cities. And then Axl finished with "Take Me Home." Slash preferred his second line. You know, the rest of the band, they said no way. He was outvoted and they used the first line. Axl drew from his Midwest roots on this one, painting a picture of green fields and innocence and endless possibilities. It's a clash of words. Hard-edged reality meets a dream of a fantasy land. Slash was not a fan of the grass is green line, though. He thought it was just really wimpy. But in the end, Slash put his stamp on the song in the best possible way by inventing the heavy, driving riff that made Paradise City a hellacious rock anthem for sure. This is one that gets forgotten on Appetite for Destruction, but I think it's one of his best songs. And Slash also delivered my favorite part of Paradise City. You know, when the track explodes to double time with Slash playing a guitar solo in the background. Paradise City was a big chunk of what made GNR's Appetite for Destruction such a landmark album. It was actually the only cut on the album where a synthesizer, with Axl actually playing it, was on the recording. It was the 4th single released from Appetite for Destruction, selling more than 2 million units alone. The single scaled to #2 in New Zealand and the Netherlands. It was a #6 hit in the UK, and it went to #5 on the Billboard Hot 100, and all the way to #1 in Ireland. For our bridesmaid position on this one, our #2 spot, it's appropriate for what song it is, because this was another song that went to #2 and was held out of the #1 position by Janet Jackson, "Miss You Much." First it was The Cure, and then it was Tears for Fears. And #2, I got Tears for Fears with Sowing the Seeds of Love. And let's be clear, this is a masterpiece. A masterpiece. The lead single from Tears for Fears' third studio album. One day, I guess Roland Orzabal was listening to the radio and a story caught his ear. And this story would plant the seed for one of Tears for Fears' most ambitious songs. These guys took years for this thing. So the program on the radio was about Cecil Sharp, the man credited with kickstarting the English folk song revival. As the story went, Sharp had once overheard a gardener named John England singing an old folk tune called The Seeds of Love. And something about the melody and those words struck a chord with him. It led Sharp down a path of discovery, collecting and preserving the traditional songs of England before they faded into history.
I sowed the seeds of love.
That single song, the first one Sharp ever documented, became the foundation for an entire movement. And decades later, it found new life in a completely different era. Inspired by this story, Roland Orzabal, he wove its essence into Sowing the Seeds of Love, even tipping his hat to the gardener himself in the lyric, Mr. England sowing the seeds of love. What had once been a humble folk tune passed from a gardener to a collector now echoed through the airwaves in a bold symphonic anthem of change. Another part of it is every day as Roland passed a wall near his home, his eyes would land on a simple piece of graffiti. It would say, "I love a sunflower." He never thought much of it, just another phrase scrawled on the urban landscape. But when he found himself in the studio struggling to fill a gap in the guide vocal for Sowing the Seeds of Love, the words surfaced in his mind. Instead of humming a placeholder melody, he sang them, "I love a sunflower." What started as a bit of spontaneity took on an eerie sense of fate. Just as Sowing the Seeds of Love was about to be released, the Ecology Party made unexpected gains in the European elections, and their emblem was a sunflower. When Orzabal heard that, he was stunned. He said, "I had no idea. It all seems to be fitting in now." When Roland Orzabal first laid down the demo for Sowing the Seeds of Love, it was just him and a Fairlight CMI. Really a rough vocal track. But as the song took shape, the band brought it to life at Townhouse Studios. Roland manned the electric piano and vocals, and Kurt Smith locked in on the bass. Chris Hughes drove the rhythm on drums, and Ian Stanley added a rich swirling layer with his Hammond organ. Now, David Bascombe, the engineer and producer for the sessions, was blown away by Stanley's organ work. And he wanted just one more take, an extra flourish to perfect that sound. But Stanley wasn't having it. He simply wasn't interested in overdubbing. His part was fantastic, is what Bascombe would later recall, but he never rated himself as a keyboard player at all. So getting him to do it was always a bit like pulling teeth. Despite Stanley's reluctance, his contribution helped shape the song's lush psychedelic landscape, a sound that will become one of Tears for Fears' most defining moments. Richard Niles constructed the orchestral arrangement of Sowing the Seeds of Love. Of course, this song has the 60s nostalgia vibe, very obvious nod to the Beatles here. In fact, Paul McCartney said at the time, and I quote, "Who are they kidding?" Actually, I'm just going to show you what he said. It's pretty funny.
It's a tribute. I'm honoured. This is two contemporary guys. One of them's being John, the other one's being me. So, I mean, I'm going to put in for a royalty.
Yeah, he probably should have got a royalty. It is very obviously taken from Sgt. Pepper. All right, we're here at the big reveal. Countdown of the top 10 songs of 1989. Man, truly a year overflowing with greatness. These 10 songs are great. Number 1, though, I gotta go with Free Fallin' by Tom Petty. Here's the thing, Free Fallin' was a total joke. It was written as a joke. One day, Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne of Electric Light Orchestra, who was producing Full Moon Fever, they were both in the studio, and Tom Petty was just trying to make Jeff Lynne laugh. He was messing around. He started throwing out some bullshit lyrics. She's a good girl. This girl, she loves her mama, she loves horses, and she loves Jesus and Elvis.
Loves Jesus in America too.
And Jeff is falling down laughing. But in all this commotion, Jeff says the word free falling. He talks Tom Petty into making this joke a song, and they record it. They submitted it, and the label refused to put it out. They said it would never be a hit. There's no way. Well, actually, Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne waited the label out. They waited for them to replace a new CEO came in. They got the song put out, and this joke song became Tom Petty's biggest hit ever. Now remember, Full Moon Fever was Tom Petty's debut solo album, even though he had a lot of the Heartbreakers with him. The single flew to number 1 on the mainstream rock chart. It went to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 5 in Canada. And you know what? This song actually did peak in the first few weeks of 1990, but this song belongs to 1989. Here's a couple of honorable mentions from 1989 that almost made the countdown. It's really tough. What do you think about my top 10? What are your picks? What are your top 10 songs of 1989? Truly a strange year in music, a transition year. Let's talk about these songs. Let's have a great discussion below. What else should we cover? What other years should we cover here? Let us know. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.